This portion of the virtual conference is cool things you can do with Db2 Web Query for I. You've seen the big logo on the right hand side there. We're celebrating our 30th year anniversary for the AS400, now IBM Ion Power. We're also a bit over our 10th year anniversary for Db2 Web Query. And we're pretty excited about the evolution that this product has seen since 10 years ago. And it's really a night and day different product from back then. And hope you're happy with what you'll see today, some of the cool things you can do with it. Very powerful stuff. If you have questions that we can't get to today via the chat session, don't hesitate to reach out to us, either me directly, my email is there, or our entire web query team, developers and support staff, as well as our consulting team is copied on that QU2 at us.ibm.com email. So that's another great way to reach out to us. I'm starting right away with the chart that's usually pushed to the back, just because I want to make sure you're aware of some additional resources available to you. Our marketing website has a great frequently asked question document on it. Our wiki is more technical information. The getting started enablement, if you're interested in getting some assistance with training or some getting started hand holding. And then 221 is our latest version, so we've got some information out there about that specific version. And what's pretty exciting to me is a whole new set of video demonstrations that you can link to that not only show you some of the new powerful charting and visualization and drill through capabilities, we'll take a look at those today as well, but also then shows you how those things are built. So really nice to have those available to you as another learning mechanism. And then the bottom link there is information about our easy install, which I'll get to here in a second. If you're a glutton for punishment, you can certainly follow me on Twitter or look at my blog. Tend to use this for announcement information, and might be a nice way to keep up to date on things that are happening around the web query world. The agenda that I hope to take us through here is just a real short recap of web query for those that might be new to it and how to acquire it. I'm going to try to build an interactive dashboard in less than 5 minutes, but I promise less than 10 minutes. And then creating reports of your favorite systems utilization metrics for those that are system admins out there, how you can leverage some of the integration points we have with IBM I services. And then if you're a green screen query person, you probably know all about chained queries that do dual passes or more passes of the data in order to get an end result set. So you're using what we call guerrilla data warehousing to try to use techniques that build temporary or work files and then build secondary queries over that. We'll show you how you can replace a chained query with a single pass, single Db2 Web Query report. The product has 3 members in the family today: Express Edition, Standard Edition, and then the Data Migrator ETL tool. Express is what we consider our entry-level edition. It does have all the report authoring capabilities and all the report output options. And chances are high you probably already own license rights to Express Edition. That's because we provided it for everyone who owned the green screen query, which is just about everybody. If you're interested in knowing specifically what you might own, you can certainly talk to your IBM business partner or reach out to us at that QU2.us@us.ibm.com email ID, and we can look it up for you. Standard Edition is an upgrade from Express, adds additional report deployment and additional data sources, as well as a runtime user licensing scheme. So job scheduling functionality, run the reports in the background, push it out via distribution list or to a network drive. APIs that will allow you to embed reports into your own customized application. The ability to reach out to non-DB2 relational database sources like Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server and pull data from that into your reports. And then probably the biggie from a cost perspective is really just this ability to support, hundreds of thousands of concurrent runtime users through the runtime group licensing that is only available in standard edition. So at some point in time, you could say, hey, if I got X number of people that need to run reports, it's just a better decision to move to standard edition cost-wise because I have so much more headroom. Also, these other things that are included in standard edition. So the break-even point is usually around 25 users. That would drive your desire to just move into standard edition from Express. Lastly, we're seeing a lot of clients have an infrastructure that really requires the creation of a consolidated enterprise data mart or data warehouse, and this is where the ETL tool comes into play here. So in the same family, everything runs in I. You can consolidate data from multiple servers, including non-DB2 data servers. You can automate transformation of that data, all of that stuff that complicates report authors, like untangling pack date decimal date fields or creating virtual or calculated fields. You can do that as part of that transformation as well. So it can pull data also from a changed data capture perspective from your journal receivers. So a replication aspect of this is also involved. Fairly low cost, I would say significantly lower cost than most ETL tools that you find on the market. And really it's all IBMI. So it uses the same reporting server, the same components that the Web Query business intelligence side of the product set uses as well. All right, real quickly, the concept of metadata is an important one for Db2 Web Query because it really simplifies the perspective of the underlying data to report authors and end users. So in Web Query, we call a metadata object a synonym, and it really represents a data source. So you don't actually build a report over your underlying files. You don't have to move data or anything like that, but you have to, at a minimum, create this representation of the data in those underlying files. And that's what we call a synonym. But it's not just your files and tables. You can also use other data sources and define those as the data source for your synonym. So Query 400 reports, you can build a web-based dashboard that is actually invoking a Query 400 report that you already have in place. If you're savvy with SQL and you've done a lot of free-form SQL in scripts or in SQL views, that could be another data source. Aggregations, even programs defined as stored procedures. So an RPG or an SQL stored procedure that returns a result set. When you execute the report, the execution is actually of that program. It's grabbing the fields that come back in that result set and plotting them on a geographical map, for instance. The end user doesn't know that you actually call an RPG program to do that. They don't really even care, but it can be used as another data source in a synonym. Then finally, uploaded Excel files and non-DB2 data sources as well. So that middle layer there are not just the representation of those data sources, but also enhancements that allow me to do things like create virtual or calculated or derived fields, like being able to add date attributes like quarter, month, year, today minus 30, is this in the fiscal period? That kind of thing that's very commonly used in report building simplifies the world for that report author, as well as provides documentation over what makes up a derived field, and also creates this concept of single version of the truth. So you can rest assured that if net sales is used in somebody's spreadsheet, it's the same derivation of what net sales means, whether it's in that spreadsheet, somebody else's spreadsheet, or feeding a pie chart on a dashboard. Now here's the public service announcement. How is it best to acquire, install, and get to work with Web Query? It is with our new Easy Install package. Actually, it's not that new. It's been out now for about 1.5 years, but it's been updated with our latest levels of code. And you want to use this versus the traditional way because it simplifies your installation, but also provides a bunch of setup so that you can dig right in and learn how to use Web Query. You request the Easy Install package by sending an email to, again, the QU2 at us.ibm.com ID, and please include your serial number. And this is good for both a brand new installation, an upgrade to an existing installation, or if you want to just try out the latest version in a trial type environment. You can use easy install for all those types of scenarios. So what's in it? We provide all of the 3 products, including the features like Developer Workbench as part of it. So it is a script that does all the Restore License program products for you. It has the latest PTF group already installed. There's a prereq checker that'll tell you, oops, we found something that you don't have. That's a prereq that you got to go fix before you run this. And it includes 100+ different sample reports, a Query 400 discovery tool, a set of sample reports around systems monitoring that I'll show you about here in a little bit. And when you're done installing, it points you to a website that the first item on that website is a test drive that you can pull down and run to find out what you've installed. Shows you a number of these different sample reports, as well as walks you through creation of your first couple of reports. Then the second bullet on that is actually our set of 14 chapters of tutorials on how to build reports. So right out of the gate, you can learn what you have and learn how to build reports and get pretty dangerous with the capabilities of the product. If everything goes smoothly and you pass your prereq checker, this should be about a 15-minute installation. Yes, there's some download time and some upload times that expand the elapsed time for you, but the actual installation process, assuming you have all your prereqs in place, actually takes about 15 minutes and you're ready to go. So we're really pleased with this. We're getting a lot of great feedback on it and have had close to 500 requests for easy install since we first introduced it. All right, let's move on to something a little bit cooler than some PowerPoint slides. Let's show you a little demo here. And one of the new things in 2.2.1 is how simple it is to enable taking a fairly static report and turning it into a much more dynamic type report for the end user through auto drill and auto link capabilities. So let's have a look. I've got a browser window up here somewhere over here, and here is my at this point fairly static report. By the way, if you haven't seen this, this is the BI portal. You have a set of folders from an organizational standpoint, and within those folders, reporting objects. And so I've created one here for today's virtual conference, and I've got a number of reports and dashboards in here. So I'm running the sales by location parent report. I can just double click on that. It's a static HTML report with a couple of columns, product type and country, and then 4 measurement columns, quantity, returns, revenue, and cost of goods sold. And this is a nice static report, but wouldn't it be nice to allow the end user to be able to manipulate some of the data in this view, and or actually, if they're zeroed in on a certain product type, be able to click and link to other reports that give them more information about that specifically clicked product type. So let's go ahead and do that. I happen to cheat a little bit here, and I just opened up this report already in our report authoring tool called Info Assist. And if you haven't seen this before, it's a fairly intuitive way to drag and drop fields from my data panel into either the what you see is what you get kind of layout area or my query panel structure here. So you can see I've got product type and country as by fields, and then I'm summing up these other 4 measurement fields. There is a set of tools up here in my ribbon based on the home tab that I'm at, including what output do I want this particular report to be. Here's the one where you can set it up to allow the end user to select the output at runtime, and some other attributes of reports, including 100+ different style sheets that I have a default that sets this column heading to a little darker blue and every other line to gray, but you could even customize your own style sheet and have a fairly standard look and feel for all of your reports that you run out. In our case, we want to just go over to the Format tab within Info Assist, and there's a couple buttons here. There's something called Auto Drill, so I'm going to enable that by clicking on it, and enable auto linking. And that really indicates that this could be a parent chart. When I execute it, it could hyperlink to a secondary chart. If I wanted this to also act as a secondary chart, and be available to other reports to link to this one, I could also set this up as a target auto link. But for now, let's just enable this as a parent report. Go ahead and hit the save button, click on OK. And now if I come back to my BI portal interface here and I run this report again, I'm going to notice something different about it. Instead of having just this static report, I have some of the values in these two columns underlined, which indicates that there is a drill down or an auto link behind that. So if I look at country, I can click on, say, United States. This new pop-up thing comes up here that says, let's go from country down to the region level. And if I select that, I'm going to automatically query the data source again and come back with the data at the regional level. And I can keep going, of course. I could say, hey, maybe I want to drill down to the state level from the region level, or I want to go back to where I was. So I could either go all the way back, drill up a couple times, or just click on the Home tab to come back to the very beginning and look at this in a different way. Perhaps I want to focus on some other attributes of audio products. And if I click on audio, I can see I have that same drill down. In this case, it's from product type to product category. But I also have this auto link. And this auto link says there are two other reports that Web Qyery found where product type is passed down to these that could be hyperlinked to. So let's just go ahead and click on this bubble chart and see what happens. And actually it executed a new report, a new chart, a bubble chart, and it passed where I clicked on. So I clicked on the value of audio, passed audio down to this secondary, this child report. It even put audio into the chart header for me so that I know that I'm looking at audio products. And this is just an interesting type of chart that's available in Web Qyery, one of the probably 100 different charts and graphs that you can use to represent data. A bubble chart in particular is kind of fun because there's a lot of information just on this simple little bubble chart. The horizontal axis is revenue and the vertical axis is actually quantity, and the size of the bubble means something. So the margin, the profit margin, is represented by the size of the bubble, as you can see over here on the right hand side. So if I'm looking at a product over here, I'm seeing, here's a fairly high revenue product, not a whole bunch of quantities, and it's a fairly low margin product. Whereas, something like this, 7.1 piece home theater speaker system, it's a very profitable product, but I'm not driving a lot of revenue or quantity with that. So in theory, a business analyst might say, I want this particular bubble to be up here on the right-hand side. I want to be able to drive more revenue for this. So a simple little hyperlink told me a lot more about this particular model or particular product name. So that was a real simple way to enable that auto drill down and auto link from one report to another. All right, let's move on to the next section, which is building an interactive dashboard in less than 10 minutes, maybe 5. And first, before I do that, though, I want to express the enhancements around the end user experience as it relates to data-driven analysis. And like you saw before, but even more extended, are enhancements like dynamic parameters or in-document analytics, and then some very powerful visualizations, and that's what we'll use to build our interactive dashboard before. But a quick look at what dynamic parameters means. So here's a fairly simple report. It's got 6 columns: sales rep, store code, order date, revenue, quantity, and returns. I am looking at this through InfoAssist, and I wanted to bring up InfoAssist to just show you how we set up these dynamic parameters. But the fixed columns in this report are sales rep and then our 3 measurements. But store code and order date are actually selectable parameters in those 2 columns. And the way I have set that up, as I said, I want a dynamic parameter, we'll call it perspective, and I want the end user to be able to select whether that column represents store code or plant code. And I've got another dynamic parameter set up called date type. And again, I want the end user to be able to select, do they want to see order date, invoice date, actual ship date, and so on. Now, of course, I could have a report that has all of those columns on the report, and I have flexibility in hiding some of those columns that I don't want to see. But in this particular case, you've got a requirement for just 6 columns, but the columns 2 and 3 need to be selectable at runtime. So I've run this report with store code and order date, but within InfoAssist, if I run this report again, and by the way, this is what it would look like if you just ran this from the BI portal as well. I would see a parameter for perspective, so I can either choose store code or plant code. Maybe this time I choose plant code. And then another one for that date type. So let's, instead of looking at order date, maybe looking at actual ship date. And now when I run this report, I still have 6 columns, but the second and the third column are now plant code and actual ship date. And I can keep doing this as much as I want to. So once again, it's just another way to provide end user flexibility in changing how they look at the data, this one being dynamic parameters. All right, let's move on to in-document analytics. If I pop over to my email, I see that somebody, Db2 Web Qyery, has sent me a in-document analytics dashboard. And the point of this is really that this is a nice kind of technology for running the report, grabbing the data that you need from your data source, packaging it up, whether it's a dashboard or a report or a chart, and then distributing it out. In this case, via email. Again, it could be any number of different ways that you do that. Store it to a network drive and send out a link or FTP it or what have you. So I'm a guy out in the field, maybe a sales guy, and I am on my laptop or my mobile device. I'm completely disconnected from the back-end server, but I still want to do some views of this data that allows me to do some filtering and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up in a browser. I actually already have it open over here just to save some time. And you can see I've got a dashboard with a selection criteria here at the top that lets me filter through different regions of the world. I only care about North America. So let's filter on that. You can, if you caught that, the charts change to reflect just the North American data. I've got the 3 charts at the top. This one is a tree map, which is kind of interesting. I guess it's not too dissimilar from the bubble chart, but the idea that the size of the box matters and the color of the box matters. So, you know, darker red means less profitable products, and darker green is higher profit. So, you know, these little green boxes down here might be of interest because it says they're basically really profitable, but I'm sure not selling very much of them. If you're familiar with active reports, you can see a classic active report down here representing some of the data, where I have these drop-down triangles, and I can, you know, do things like sort on a specific column, or maybe I want to focus just on certain elements of this data, like just computers and accessories. I can create some calculated fields. I can even do some roll-ups and pivoting. If I want to, I can even add a comment to this and send that changed report with that comment out to the sales director for these certain product sets. The other thing I can do is do what's called lassoing or marquee filtering within some of these charts. So for instance, I am a sales guy. I only care about selling accessories and camcorders, so I want to eliminate this other stuff. I can just drag my cursor across 2 points of that pie chart and go and say I want to filter that chart, and I've eliminated other than the information that I'm interested in. Similarly over here, maybe I'm looking at you know, coming into the 4th quarter, and I want to focus on just the 4th quarter, so I can once again use this marquee filtering kind of thing and say, let's just grab the 6, where, well, I grabbed 8. So we'll include the September in this as well. Just because I did that wrong. Well, let's try it again. What the heck? Let's just grab the 6 data points that I care about and then filter on this chart to just now look at October, November, and December months. So that's in document analytics. Well, all right, we're ready to build a visualization in a few minutes. So when you get Easy Install, you'll get a set of sample visualization, which are a new technology in 2.2.1 that is very powerful for visualizing data and manipulating those visualizations for data analysis. So let's see if we can't build one here. Don't start your stopwatch just yet, but if I come over to the BI portal, the way I invoke the building of a visualization is just right click on your folder and say new visualization. And when you do that, it's going to come up with a window for InfoAssist Plus, defaulted to the type of visualization. So this is what that looks like. I haven't built the visualization yet, so right about now would be a good time to start your stopwatch and see how we do. So one thing you see here is that the initial visualization defaults to a stacked bar chart. What we really want is a heat map. So let's go ahead and change that to a heat map. And then we're going to put product category into the vertical axis. And we're going to put order month into the horizontal axis. So product category into the vertical axis. And what did I say? Order month. Remember, you might have packed 8 decimal fields, so we've untangled your legacy date fields and put them into fields that we can understand, date attributes. Let's drop that on horizontal axis. And then we want a measurement like gross profit as our color scale representation. And so gross profit, again, this isn't in, you can see the different icons here between, say, price and profit. Profit is a calculated field in the metadata. It doesn't exist in my underlying data, but the report author doesn't know or care. They just want to drag gross profit into their field. And there you go. There's our initial heat map. And because this is a dashboard, we're probably going to want another view and then some way to tie those views together, which is actually done automatically. So let's insert a new chart. And again, it defaults to a stacked bar chart, so we don't want that. So first let's grab this thing at the top and move it around. Rather than side by side, it might look nicer if we have one on top of the other. So I can just drag that second graphic, that second chart down below the first one. And let's scoot that up a little bit here, give it a little more real estate. And we want to change this thing to a line chart. Now you see we have a second representation up here in our query panel. We had the heat map, now we're working with the line chart. So what we want to do is add order month as the horizontal axis. We're going to build what's called a matrix chart here. So we want to say, let's make order year the column in a matrix view. As long as we're down here working with our dimensions, let's add product type to our color by. Yeah, we're not quite done yet. Let's do one more thing. Let's add revenue as our vertical axis, and revenue is up here at the top, because that's a measurement. And those are our two charts in our visualization. Well, we're not quite done yet. It would be nice to have that parameter interaction from an end user perspective as well. So let's go ahead and add country as a parameter that can be selectable, and country is underneath store locations. So we grab that, bring it into the filter. It opens a pop-up to allow us to change attributes of that filter. We're just going to take the defaults, and it's going to create a set of checkboxes for that particular parameter. Let's also add order year as a parameter. So we're also going to drag that into our filter box, our filter panel. Take the defaults, and for a date range kind of thing, it's going to create a slider bar to represent how you select the different years. So there's order year, but it would be nice to minimize this extra space between the country and the order year. So let's just grab this and bring this up a little bit, make that a little bit nicer. And at this point, you can stop your stopwatches and see if we made it under 5 minutes. But we'll also run this thing. So this is the perspective of the visualization builder, if you will, and they can certainly continue on with this, add additional fields to this. This type of user would require one of these authorized user licenses. But if we want to see this from the perspective of the runtime user, let's just go ahead and run this. And it's going to open up a new browser window with our new visualization in it. And here it comes with our parameter selection checkboxes and slider bars and our two graphical representations. There we are. So this would be the perspective from the end user. And again, they could use these to maybe just filter some of the data on a couple of countries. All of these charts should reflect that change that you made up here, if that's an element that feeds into that chart. Let's just go ahead and select all again. You also have some of the facilities that I showed you already. So if I click on a certain element up here in one of these visualizations, I can drill up. I'm looking at product category, so it allows me to drill up to product type. I'm looking at order month, so it allows me to drill up to order quarter. Or I could also drill down to model or drill down to day right from here. I've also got that marquee filtering capability, so I can come over here and grab 6 data points and just look at the last 3 months of the year across my visualizations. If you want to go back to where you were, obviously you can just do the marquee filtering again and say, let's remove that filter. So drill downs and filterings are an automatic part of the visualizations as well. All right, I hope we made it in 5 minutes. Before we start in on the next section, you might be thinking to yourself, hey, this looks great. How do I get started? And so I just want to take a moment to step back and reiterate that when you get the Easy Install package, you get this folder up here called Retail Samples and another folder down here called Century Electronics. And in these folders are really all kinds of examples of what you just saw and more. So there's some classic reports, there's all the different kinds of charts, probably not all the kinds, but a number of examples of some of the varied charts that you get, including like this geographical map that you're looking at here, where you can plot data points to geographical locations, whether that's country, state, postal code, even latitude, longitude. You saw maybe the tree map and heat map examples, and there's a number of other highly visual charting capabilities here. The in-document analytics example is here, as well as several visualizations. And all of these sample reports that are included with Easy Install have a demo behind them. So down here, if you double click on demo videos, it actually takes you to our website where you can view all of these demos, and not just how you interact with the reports, charts, documents, and visualizations, but how they're actually built. In addition to that, you also get a Century Electronics folder with even more sample reports, even very basic reports like how do I do a summary report, or how do I create a report, then push the results down into an Excel spreadsheet, to additional charting and even different kinds of dashboards that you can build that look more traditional than some of the visualization capabilities that you just saw here. So again, the idea is not just to provide this functionality, but hopefully to provide samples of how you would build these on your own and learn from the Easy Install process. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about how you could use Web Query to create dashboards and reports over systems utilization metrics. So as we've seen up to this point, mostly using the product from a business side of the house kind of thing. So if you're a systems administrator, can you use it to build reports and create PowerPoints and so forth from things that you're mostly interested in, which is what's going on with my systems? And the answer is yes. And in fact, along with the retail samples and Century Electronics folders that we include with Easy Install, we also include a folder called IBMI Administration Samples. So not only is the answer yes, you can do it, but here are some samples about how you can go about doing that. And there's a variety of different reports. You might like them, you might not like them. We kind of cherry picked a few that we thought would be interesting, and we're certainly looking for more feedback on additional monitoring kinds of things that you guys do in your day-to-day lives that would be interesting to have a report over. And so I'll take you through some of those, but when you get Easy Install, you get that list of reports on the right-hand side. These are built over something called IBMI services that provide SQL interfaces that make it way easier than previously to get this kind of information and be able to consume it in a report. So let's take a look at some of these. In fact, I think I have one of these dashboards running right now, if I can remember where I put that. So let's pop over here to, oh yeah, here we go. So I have Web Qyery running in one of our LPARs back in Rochester, and I'm running this self-refreshing utilization monitoring dashboard. And what this actually does is it not just gathers utilization information over the system where Web Qyery is running, but it actually reaches out to other LPARs and servers identified to this system in the network and gathers information from those systems as well. So each of these lines and the labels over here actually reflect the fact that we're getting information from 4 different LPARs or servers, because these other 3 are identified to this local system in the relational database directory entries. So under the covers, what we're doing is invoking the service through that interface on all 4 of these systems to gather the CPU utilization, bring it back, and then plotting it over different time periods. So this is the last hour, the last 2 hours, the last 8 hours, and the last 24 hours. And this is also a self-refreshing dashboard. I don't know if you saw the little spinning wheels happen there, but every minute, oh, here we go, perfect timing. Every minute this thing is run again to refresh the data and reach out to those other 3 systems, including the local system, and gather that and bring that back. This runs in a background job that we've set up to do that, and just for safety purposes, once you start running this dashboard, we kick in that background job, but we end it after 24 hours because we don't want it running endlessly. If you do, give us a call and we'll show you how you could extend that to continue to run. But it's just another dashboard example and a self-refreshing thing that's included in that sample portfolio. There's a number of others in here. Again, it's under the systems administration examples up here. So these reports are all based on whether the service or not exists in your operating system. So your operating system and technology refresh level will make a difference on whether that service is there or not. So the very first report we include in the sample is get the status of the system admin reports. And here are the different reports in here. And the green news is good. Report status says, I'm at the right levels on this system to be able to run all these reports. And in fact, there's also a hyperlink to actually run these different reports here. So our system is in good shape. And if you're really at 7.2 on a more recent database technology refresh, you're probably going to see all green as well. But if not, we'll potentially see red. We have a PTF group currency report as well. So this one actually goes out to the internet and grabs the most recent level available for PTF groups and lists that in one of the columns of this report, and then compares that to what you actually have installed. So if you're at the latest level, obviously your status is green. We've added some traffic lighting to this, but if it looks like you're maybe down level, then that's going to be highlighted in red. So it's a real quick and easy report to be able to see if I'm up to speed with all of my PTF groups. And there are a number of other reports here that we include that just provide different ways of doing reports or different types of dashboards as well. A system information report that shows me status across multiple LPARs and so forth. So CPU, top 10 jobs by CPU, by disk I/O, by temporary storage. Who are my worst spool file consumers that aren't cleaning up their stuff, or which are my largest output queues, and so forth. So a number of these sample reports, and again, it's not boiling the ocean here. They're designed to be samples, and then we provide you with the information on how these are built. So having said that, they're using these IBM I services. And what is an IBM I service? It is basically a set of SQL-based interfaces to gather this information. And they're delivered through SQL views or user-defined functions or stored procedures, which makes them very easily consumable by web query. And in fact, there are also a bunch of SQL scripts, SQL examples that are provided in Run SQL scripts that also make it very easy to incorporate this functionality into web query. So this is a poster here of the services that have been delivered, and this is kind of an ongoing thing here. It's not just, hey, one time deliver these things. Each new technology refresh, it seems, includes more services as Scott Forstein and team expands these. And the ones circled in red there are just some of the newer ones, but this is a list of services by subject area. So security services, communication services, product services. You can see under security, there's things like authority collection, authorization list info. In fact, not being talked about too much today in this webinar, but we also have a security assessment type tool that we've built and sell as an out-of-the-box package, leveraging Db2 Web Qyery. And under the covers, what we're doing is using a lot of these services to gather that information. So similarly, we could do something for the systems monitoring approach if we get enough cards and letters that suggest that we should do that. Anyway, these services are listed here. You can find out more information about them at the links down here at the bottom of the page, but also listed is how they are delivered, whether they're delivered through an SQL view or a user-defined function or actually a stored procedure. And that helps us determine how we can incorporate them into web query. So run SQL scripts. Oh, let's just bring this up and see if I can show you that way. I think I have a window still open here, so let's clean that out and start from scratch. So if you're familiar with Access Client Solutions, over time we've added more of the database functionality that used to be in the old Windows client into this. And included in that is a whole bunch of sample SQL statements. So if I go up to Edit, and I say insert from examples, I have in this drop-down box a way to toggle in between different types of examples of SQL, and what I might want to focus on, since we're talking about it, is IBM I services. So if I click on IBM I services, I see a whole ton of SQL that is already provided for me across these different subject areas. So if I'm a systems admin person, and I know I've got this niggly ODBC jobs that I'm always dealing with and can't really control and so forth, and I kind of want to see who's really doing that, and they're coming in through this subsystem called QZDASO init. I'm sure you're familiar with that and can roll that off your tongue better than I did just there. But here's a service that might be interesting to me. I can come in here and say, let's insert from examples, bring this thing up in the run SQL scripts. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, but let's go ahead and run this just to make sure that this particular example using a service provided will actually execute. And sure enough, it does. In this case, the example gives us just 10 rows and orders. Maybe, you know, if I want to build a report over this, I want to see everything, and I can choose in my report to actually say, I just want to do a top 10 ranking report or what have you. So I would actually, you know, me personally would probably take that out from this sample. But here is the result set from that service, from that example that was invoking that service. And so you can scroll through here and look and see what the field names are that are returned. Things like job name, subsystem, authorization name, what the job status is, what the CPU time is that they're consuming, and so forth. Now, this might be an interesting service to build a report over. So at this point, I can say, well, what do I want to do? I want to save this thing as an SQL script and upload that into Web Query, or maybe what I would do is probably add some wrapper code to this and say, create or replace view and turn this thing into a view. And then once it's defined as a view, I can create a synonym over that. Or Web Query also has a run SQL scripts facility in it as well. So I could actually just cut and paste this over to the run SQL scripts. We don't call it that. We call it the SQL report wizard, but fundamentally it is a scripting tool, and I can just build a report over this script after I've cut and pasted it into the Web Query. So I have a number of different ways to do that, but the foundation for building these reports is really there through these services and through the sample SQL that Scott and his team have provided. All right, if you're with me so far, we have one more thing to show you here, and that is really just, if I did what I would do is create a view over this, because I kind of think that's the best practice, then go ahead and create a synonym, that metadata representation of the data source. So I would do that through this screenshot here, create the synonym through the synonym editor. I want to say I create over a view. The view is in this particular library. Here's a list of those views in that library, so select the views of interest, and then up comes my synonym editor, and these are all of the fields that are actually returned from that IBM service and or SQL statement. From here, it becomes really easy. And in fact, this synonym, while this right now just represents the fields returned from that view, again, you could enhance this synonym at this point as well. For instance, maybe if I'm doing this and I'm going to do it every day, and the intent is to show some trend over time, maybe I want to put a new field, add a virtual field in here called day of the week. And I want to, when I build my reports, eliminate non-working days. I just want to build a report over data for Monday through Friday and exclude Saturday and Sunday. So it might be nice to have as an additional virtual field available to my report what day of the week it is. So it's very easy to even take this particular, looks like a file, but it's really a view, and actually join it to a date dimension table to get those additional date attributes associated with the point in time where you collected this information. So the synonym, once that's in place, the report building becomes fairly simple. So let me see if I did this. Whoops, let's back up here. I think I did that very same thing here. Let me see if I have it, where I just took that sample around that particular SQL statement, the top QZ, DSA, O, and NIT jobs, built a report over it. This literally took about less than 10 minutes to do. And now I have a report that shows me returned from that service all of that information. Well, I didn't include every one of those columns or fields returned from that SQL statement. I just included the ones that were of interest. So literally within 5 to 10 minutes, I was able to take that sample SQL, bring it into Web Query, build a report over it, and here we are. So cool? Yeah, I think so. Well, all right then, we're almost done. One other topic is dealing with a chained query with a single pass, single web query report. What is a chained query? A very common practice in green screen query to deal with more complicated reporting requirements, where you needed to run a first level query to generate an output set and then run a second query against that in order to get the final result. So you can imagine you're adding a lot of extra work here to get a difficult reporting requirement addressed here by doing that process. The example I'm going to use is the classic as a percentage of example depicted on the right hand side there, but not as a percentage of a grand total, but as a percentage of a subtotal. So what do I mean by that? I've got product type, product category, and revenue, and then I summed up revenue by product type. So I have subtotals in my report. And I want to have a new column in this report that is a percentage of revenue within that product type. So as a percentage of within a window of product type depicted there. So it's not against the grand total, it's of the subtotal. So normally in the green screen query, this would absolutely require a couple passes of the data to first build the summary by product type and then run another query that creates the as a percentage of against that and then combine the result sets. So often with web query, when we get asked a question, the answer is, well, there's probably a couple, three different ways that you could do this, and that's true in this case as well. So the three that are indicated here, the first one is to essentially do the same process within web query that you might do with the chained query, where I create a temp table, get a result set, and then create a second query that actually creates the as a percentage of calculation and then joins to the temp work set. So there is a concept in Db2 Web Qyery that allows you to do that. It's called a hold file, and it works fairly similarly, and it works within the report execution process. So my answer or comment in blue there is really why would you do this, though? If you have other alternatives that are more efficient and simpler, then why would you bother to replicate this this process? There are times where hold files make sense in Db2 Web Qyery. Probably if you're wanting to query a remote database like Microsoft SQL Server and go get that data first. I build my first query to go get that, bring it into a temporary hold file, and then build my final result from that, combining it with data from DB2. That might be a good example of using a hold file, but really we wouldn't want to put lipstick on the pig here. So the second and the third options are the ones that we're going to focus on. The second one is actually just using functions within web query itself that we can apply to a field or a column. And then the last one is using the SQL language enhancements that were made in 7.3 to actually push the work to DB2 and have it do the heavy lifting for us. So the number two option here, using really the report writing capabilities within the InfoAssist component is what we're going to do. So this is taking either a brand new report that has those columns on it, or you could even take your highest level, your level 1 query, and import that into Db2 Web Qyery and do this same technique against that. That would still eliminate that concept of a temporary file and do a single pass of the data, starting with your highest level query 400 definition. So either way this works. I would probably say creating it natively is going to outperform the imported query 400. But here we have product type, product category, and revenue. And what we want to do is actually just repeat this revenue column again. So it shows up twice. So that's the first thing we want to do. Then we want to alter that second revenue column and change some attributes about it. So if we right click on that second revenue column, we get this little pop-up menu that says, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to format it? Do you want to change the title of it? We will change the title of it to as a percentage of. Do you want to hide it? Do you want to sort on that? But what we want to do is click on aggregation functions and then specify that we want this to be a percentage field. And then we have one other simple step here. Let's right click on it again, go back into the More button here, and instead of aggregation functions, we want to say aggregate within, and we want to aggregate within the product type field. So now we've said we want this to be a percentage, and we want it to be a percentage within that product type. So it's really just a function of a report attribute, a field attribute. And one other step we probably want to do is not only change the title of that column to be as a percentage of rather than revenue, but also we really don't want a subtotal of that as a percentage. So we would come into the subtotal editor and just deselect that second revenue column so the subtotal doesn't show up there again erroneously. And here's our completed report. So now we have percent revenue, and this will run very efficiently, just allowing Db2 Web Query to do its thing on a single pass of the data. So fairly simple, even leveraging your imported Query 400. Now, if you are an SQL programmer, which you may not be, you've just seen a very efficient way to do it without generating any SQL, allowing the Infosys to do your SQL generation. But if you are an SQL coder, there are some new abilities in the language at 7.3 called OLAP extensions, and we don't have enough time to go into that in great depth here, but the key thing about OLAP extensions, one of the concepts is the ability to do, aggregation functions over windows of your data. So similar to how we did the aggregate within in Web Query, what we want to use in our SQL statement is a new construct called partition by. That's really the key to this SQL statement is I really just want to select product type category. I want to sum line total, but I want to create this as a percentage of field based on looking at the sum of line total over a partition by product type. And that's really the critical aspect to it is the second and the third lines of this SQL statement and the new partition by. So I hope that makes sense. Again, this is not a session necessarily on the SQL coding techniques of OLAP. We can certainly do another session on that over time, or if you attend some of the conferences, certainly we cover much of this there as well. But this is what I did in lieu of doing the aggregation function and aggregate within the report writing function. Let me just pop over there. I've got the run SQL script still up here. So I created this SQL statement. You can see here I've added the partition by, and if I run this thing, just to make sure it works, I can see down below I've got product type, product category, and revenue and product percentage of product of within the type category total up here. So now it's not sorted. I don't have my subtotals. This is not a finished report. It's just validating that my SQL statement actually works. So again, my best practice would be to then take that SQL statement, wrapper it with a create view or create or replace view command. So create the view and then create the synonym and then build my report over that. So when that report runs, you're actually calling the SQL statement that's having DB2 do all the work for you. The other option where I used it in Web Query, the aggregate within and aggregation percent, I'm having the reporting engine do the work for me. And then of course, if I use hold files, that's going to take way longer to run. So that wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this session today. I enjoyed having the privilege of presenting to you. And again, here are some of the links where you can get additional information or check out some of the videos of the new visualizations and in document analytics and so forth. And again, how do I get easy install? Send an email to qu2@us.ibm.com, include your serial number and your company name, and we'll return your gift, a installation guide and a link to the easy install, and you'll be up and running in minutes. Thanks again so much. We'll talk to you soon.